Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, The Inked Reader. Today I am yet again trying to catch up desperately what I watched recently videos. I realized that spring was about to come around and I had not filmed even what I watched in fall 2022, so I put that video up and now a few weeks later you're gonna see what I watched in winter. I usually divide them by season, but I have a track record of being awfully off time with uploading them as soon as the season finishes. So these are just basically a recap of what I watched, from the least enjoyable to the most enjoyable watch, divided by category, and a brief reason why I liked it or I didn't like it. When it comes down to series, I include only the series that I've concluded at least one season. So I will start with the most niche category this time, which is stand-up comedies. I watch them kind of a lot because I tend to watch them while I'm having lunch, and they are usually 1 hour long, so you know, 3 lunches, usually I get them done. Now, not all the times, only if I'm working from home, so I didn't watch that many ultimately. So I got 5 to talk about today. One actually though is like, I watched 2 stand-up comedies by the same stand-up comedian, so I just kind of combined them. So I'm gonna start with number 4. I would put Theo Van something, I don't want to butcher his name. I watched this on Netflix and I really enjoy his stand-up comedies in general. He is very bizarre as a comedian and I like how natural, like you can tell that he's like that in real life. I've seen him in podcasts, interviews on YouTube and so on, and I think he's very genuine and I really enjoyed this one. He talks about his childhood a lot. He had a very rough childhood, but I appreciate a lot how he can, you know, take a very rough period of his life and make it into something that makes others laugh and still find something good in it. And it was just hilarious, very chaotic. I don't know if it's for everyone, but I do really like how genuine it comes out. And number 2, I will put the ones I combined. These are by Ronnie Chang. This is a very clever comedy, so you can tell that the guy is pretty intelligent and he uses them then to make us laugh. So I really enjoyed these 2 and I will definitely check out more stuff by him when they come out. It's actually very hard, I believe, for a whole hour and a half entertain someone on a stage with basically no props, just you talking. And definitely Chris Rock, I don't think it's top 3, but it's very high in the list of comedians I really loved, and he really captivated me for a whole hour that he talked. I constantly laughed. At the same time though, he made me think about what he was talking about, and it's that kind of sarcasm that I found very clever. I really appreciated how for the whole show, because this is filmed after the incident with Will Smith, for the whole show you keep thinking, okay, is he gonna talk about it, is it not? It was satisfying because, you know, it's easier said than done what to do after something like this happen, and I really appreciated what he does. And I think it was deserved. It was highly entertaining, and if you wanna delve into stand-up comedies, Chris Rock, David Chappelle, Eddie Murphy, Kevin Hart, those ones you can't miss, and it's always a safe bet. Then I am gonna talk about the movies I watched, a total of 7 movies. Usually I do get like 1 movie in a week at least on Saturday night with takeaway, but some Saturdays we were just out. At number 7 I would put Morbius. I don't know what this is, but no, let's pretend this didn't happen. Like, this is a Marvel story. I don't know if he's from Spider-Man. I just don't know much about comics, villains, like oldish ones, or like superheroes mostly. Like, I didn't read, and I'm not very interested in reading DC comics or Marvel comics or superhero stories. I just prefer them in like a movie or TV show format. So I had no idea who this guy was, and I wasn't impressed by the guy. Like, I would never watch a sequel. I don't think they're gonna make a sequel because I don't see this having any success. It's just the story was too simple and the motivations of the bad guy were bullshit. You just can't have those motivations. Like, it doesn't make any bloody sense. At this point, I don't justify Marvel having shitty plot lines anymore. Not that I never justified them, but they are so popular, they have such a higher budget, they can hire super famous actors and then they can't come up with a plot that makes sense. No, it was a no. At number 6 I got The Pale Blue Eyes. This is basically following Edgar Allan Poe solving a crime with a detective. So the detective it's played by Christian Bale. and I don't remember, I apologize, the name of the actor that plays Paul. This was very atmospheric. I really liked how dark and sinister it was. It takes place in, it's a murder mystery, and it takes place in this town where there is this kind of, there is basically not much around at all. It's a lot of woods and snow due to the time of the year that this takes place, and it was very atmospheric. The historical aspects of it I really enjoyed. Like, it really came through as we were watching something that took place during, you know, Poe's times. And I am a big fan of Poe, and I really liked him as a character. I really liked how the actor portrayed him, and I really liked the character of the detective and Bale. The outcome of it, I kind of saw it coming a bit, but not the very end. So overall, if you really like Poe or murder mysteries, I don't see why not giving this a try. The Northman are number 5. Now this, I had heard people comparing it to The Green Knight, and I know that Green Knight is another very divisive movie that I end up loving. The Northman, I fall on the other side of the river. I'm not a fan. This is a Viking story about this son of a chief that is murdered, and then he grows up wanting to revenge his father. A very basic story. It's well directed, it was atmospheric, and I did really like the final scene, but a bit unremarkable. Like, I don't know, I think I wouldn't compare this to The Green Knight. Like, I think The Green Knight has so many layers to it, so many questions. And just because people here were doing, like, I don't know, magic mushroom, psychedelic, and so there were some weird scenes, the weird scenes didn't inspire me to think, oh, what's actually happening? Pretty sure I knew what was happening. People on drugs. And so, I don't know, I didn't think he did the mythological part as good, or nearly as good as The Green Knight did. And I did decide to put this above Pale Blue Eyes, because Pale Blue Eyes I probably enjoyed more while watching it. However, The Northman is definitely a movie that I will speak about with other people, even if it's just for saying I thought it wasn't that good, but it sparked, or it will spark, conversations, while Pale Blue Eyes probably not. At number 4 I've got Doctor Strange, and I really liked the first Marvel movie of Doctor Strange. This one, not so much. I didn't mind it, but again, I found it quite unremarkable overall. I liked some aspects of it. I don't know, the bad guy in this, I kind of liked the story, but I did not watch the TV show prior to this, and I think that was my mistake. I should have watched WandaVision. I think if I'd done that, this would have made way more sense. So I'm gonna eventually go back and watch that TV show, and then probably rewatch these and see if that makes my experience more impactful. Because overall, I just felt so meh about these. So I'd like to know, if you watched the TV show WandaVision and then watched these, what do you think about this movie? Is it just me finding it meh, okay, nothing special, but unremarkable, or did I miss something? The number 2 and 1 are literally the same. The only reason why I put number 2 as I put it, just because number 1 was a very new thing. So on number 2/1 I've got Spider-Man. I finally subscribed to Now TV, best decision of my last 6 months. I enjoy so much the opportunity to, you know, now see things from Sky TV. So I finally catch up with these, and there are some very campy things in this movie. I loved the concept of this movie. This is exactly what I'm saying. My issue with Morbius was, like, you know how to do a cool plot because you have done it over and over again with Avengers, and now with these and a bunch of other movies. You know how to do a cool plot, so I don't understand why sometimes you just do such Marvel, I mean, you know, just come up with some bland shitty movies, because you know how to do the most cool ones. So what I didn't love necessarily, it's some of the pace of these, and also there was an overall lack of combat scenes that usually I would expect more in Spider-Man. The ones we had, I loved, and I loved how we took more time for, you know, the revival, let's call it that. I love the concept of the plot. If only I have to point out something that was a bit missing, is the combat scenes weren't as epic as other Marvel movies that I've seen before. But we all love it for a reason. I loved it too. I forgot one. Completely messed up my numbers, but I'm going to insert these between Doctor Strange that I just talked about and the next one. And this is Elvis. This is the story of Elvis Presley. I recognized the director, because I didn't know who had directed these, and then when the movie stopped and thought, is this the same as Romeo and Juliet? And yes, it was. So I got the name right. Like, his style comes out so much that it's unique. I, though, didn't love this. I think the performance was outstanding, and that's why it's so high still in the list, because I watched them videos of Elvis Presley and it's literally identical. So Austin Butler did an amazing performance, but if it wasn't for that, this one would be as enjoyable as The Northman for me. Of all the movies that this director has done, I have loved most of them. I'm a big fan of Romeo and Juliet. His take on it, wasn't a fan of this. I thought he was so rushed in certain points, and also was focusing on things that I didn't care much about. I don't understand why he chose to show these from a perspective of a manager, a piece of shit manager. Just his choices are his choices, fair enough. I didn't love them, and I would have directed these personally, not that I know anything about directing movie, but I would have chosen the focus way more on Elvis than it actually was. Still love the message of, you know, fame and family and all of that, but just saw that the scenes that I was focusing on weren't that interesting, and instead the story of Elvis, his performances and his attachments to people and things were brushed off too much. So unfortunately I didn't love this one. And at number 1/2 again, Spider-Man could be here too, I have Get Out. I finally managed to watch this very popular horror. This is about this girl that brings to her hometown her black boyfriend, and the boyfriend is a bit worried about how his family reacts because they live in a very conservative area of USA, and herself has said, you know, we don't know what my parents can do, so let's go there. And they go to the family house to spend a few days there, and very, very creepy stuff starts to happen. And this was brilliant. I liked it because, and again I keep comparing all these movies to Morbius, but I think it gives a perfect comparison example. So while Morbius had like a very simple plot that didn't bring nothing to the table, and the special effects were cool, but again they didn't add any layer or any interest for me to the plot, this Get Out has such a simple plot, but the way it's directed, the way the tension is kept and built up on it, it's so majestic. This was just a cool horror. And when you realize what's going on, you know, you realize it's quite simple, but it was brilliant. It was brilliant in its simplicity, and I think again because of the way the director does this and creates these, and the actors themselves was brilliant. And I think this movie is also showing us that you don't need a complex plot if you can have everything else. 5 out of 5 if I could rate these as a book. Loved it, and I will check out more by this director. However, I've heard that Get Out is his best. Sorry guys, I had to refilm this part because initially I had meshed up my TV shows with my true crime shows, and then I realized that it was too messy and I wanted to actually divide them. So I'm gonna leave the footage I have because incidentally they were number 2 and 1. But I'm gonna talk now about the true crime I have watched and put them from list 2. Most enjoyable one. I apologize, it's a full house today, so shouting and everything in the background, it's happening today. I was kicked out of the studio, so I had to film in the guest bedroom as well for now, but it's just a clip. I'm gonna still keep the footage of the 2 things of the true crime stuff I've watched, and I'm gonna just probably change the order a bit because I remember that I watched one thing more and I want to include it in there. So instead of me giving you numbers just for the TV show, the true crime TV show, I'm gonna insert numbers here. So I will start with I Am a Killer, which is a true crime kind of anthology where you look at people that have been accused and are actually guilty of murder and they are now in prison. Now initially the first season was about people that were on death row because of a crime they committed. Past season 1 you mostly get people that are just accused of murder and probably life without parole, most of them. And in this season is no different. It's another anthology of, you know, people that killed someone and explain their story. Some of them deny the actual killing. Some people are more straightforward and just say yes, we did it. I really enjoyed this season of the show because I think each case was unique, and each case was also a perfect example of how inequality and how trauma can lead then a person to commit atrocious crimes. I said that I'm not justifying the action. I think we all have agency to certain degrees, and so if you choose to do wrong, it's still a choice. But some of these people felt very much like they didn't know they had a choice, or they weren't able to actually realize that they had a choice and could choose differently. It was also an interesting catalogue of cases, such different killers between each other, you know, the mad, bad and all of that. I think it was all contained in here and was very well done. And if you're a fan of true crime, I'm a Killer is probably something that you want to check out on Netflix. So sorry if I'm throwing you out of the previous video a bit, but I'm here just to talk about Vatican Girls, which would be my number 2. And this is the story of this girl that when she was around 14 to 15, she used to live in the Vatican. So it's the Vatican has very, very few families living in there. It's such like a small contained place. And she went to music lessons one day, I believe it was music lessons, and she never comes home. And since 1970 something up to now, no one knows what happened to that girl. However, the development of the mystery and how the Vatican police got involved, and the traces of this girl that were left around, and everything that came with the investigation of what happened to this girl was so fascinating. Yes, I'm Italian, but I had no previous knowledge of this case. Mind you, I was born 20 years after she disappeared, so that makes sense, probably wasn't as talked about, but I was so grateful to have the opportunity to watch this on Netflix. First of all, a lot of the people featured in these are Italians, so I could actually listen to these without subtitles or anything and understand, but also I was so fascinated by the whole mystery. I want to know, and it was just such a twists and developments and turns, so many theories, so many key players potentially in this disappearance. I'm fascinated by this. Also, I'm not religious personally, so for me there was no attachment or disappointment in the church, because I always felt like I had a very good idea of how much corruption and actually a mafia the church is. But even for me, who is already a bit negatively biased when it comes down to, you know, the Catholic Church, even for me, it was so surprising seeing how much corruption and how much nastiness there is in yeah, it is mind-blowing though as a documentary. And if you are into true crime, you really don't want to miss out Vatican Girl. I'll be gone in the dark. This is a true crime documentary recounting the story of Michelle McNamara, who is an author that passed away while hunting the Golden State Killer. The Year is also called. I've Been Gone in the Dark. I read the book a year ago, more than that probably. It's the only true crime in my whole life. I felt like once I've finished reading it, first of all, I couldn't sleep at night, but also I wanted to get rid of that book. I didn't want the book in my house because it was like the evil came out of the pages. Now, this Year killer, he is terrifying. This is like a very prolific serial killer and serial rapist that terrified California between the 70s and 80s, and then he wasn't apprehended for 40 years. And Michelle McNamara started hunting him down. She was a true crime writer, and unfortunately she passed away while publishing her book on him before they knew who he was. And so I think this documentary was, first of all, a masterpiece in terms of true crime. I think the way it's done is very tasteful, but I also loved how this is truly a tribute to Michelle McNamara. Like, the victims and Michelle McNamara is what comes out of the pages. Yes, you discuss the killer and what he does in detail, so you have a clearer picture and idea of, you know, the serial killing and serial raping that is going on at all times, but by no means that minimize or downplays the role of the victim and Michelle herself. I think it was done so well. I was truly impressed by these guys. If you're into true crime, I would suggest this. It's also such a nice addendum to the book. I had not read the book in a year and a half, some memory gaps there, and this one gave me all the things that the book did by also quoting Michelle McNamara and making you hear her voice, and also provided a couple of episodes that go past the book and past where it was published and give you so more details about the whole thing. So love this. If you're into true crime, you really don't want to miss I'll Be Gone in the Dark. I think it's on Now TV in England at least until May. No idea where you can find it after, but it was released with HBO. And it's again me from another day, just to say that of TV shows, actually excluding now the true crime, I had just watched 2 full seasons or something. So not to make things too confusing, I'm just gonna pop numbers here so you know which one was number 2 and which one was number 1. I will have to actually put Fire and Blood, guys. I finally watched these, and again, that's why I actually downloaded Now TV and subscribed to it, because I wanted to watch these after I read the book in August last year. And I like this, like, don't get me wrong, but you can tell that this has not the same budget or the same writers as Game of Thrones. Now, let's dismiss the last season, but we can probably all agree that Game of Thrones, up until season 8, was one masterpiece of fantasy shows. I think I've never watched something as good as Game of Thrones. So this one, though I liked it, I liked the performances and everything, I didn't think it was adding any magic to the book. I preferred the book, basically. I don't know how the second half is gonna go. I understand that this is just one part of the whole book, and I did again very much enjoyed it. I don't think it's in the same plane though as Game of Thrones, and the vibe was there only to a certain extent. Someone has consumed all the material that's out there that could be consumed at the moment. Apart from the graphic novels I want to check out multiple times, because I've read Game of Thrones multiple times, I think that the Book of Blood and Fire gave me everything I wanted, and this TV show didn't add to that. But at the same time, it was very nice. And at number 1, final thing for the day, I have to put Supernatural, because I finally decided it was time for me to conclude this huge chapter of my life that started when I was probably 16, and I decided to watch season 14 and 15, which are the last 2 seasons of the show. Now, Supernatural is a supernatural TV show where you follow Dean and Sam, these 2 brothers that hunt monsters. And yes, the first 8 seasons are a masterpiece. Then season 9, 10, up to season 14, not included probably, were less good in terms of quality, in my opinion. But I think also this deals with a budget that is relatively low. The monsters and the CGI and everything is a bit outdated in a sense, but what carries on these carries on. By the way, it's a pun intended. If you know the show, you know why. So what carries on this TV show indeed is Sam and Dean. They are the perfect match. They are hilarious, and I cried like a baby watching these, and I'm so glad I finished it. Season 15 is brilliant. Like, season 15 I think is as good as any of the first seasons. I wished it finished with episode 19. I think that was such a nice conclusion, like the conclusion I wanted to see. And then they have one more episode that broke me, and I don't understand why they felt the need of doing it. So I don't know, if I could go back in time, I would carry on watching these up until the second to last episode, and then I would just switch off and be done with it and go on with my life, remembering Supernatural as one of the best TV shows I've ever watched. Sam and Dean are perfection, and yeah. But yeah, I watched all of it, and I saying that I cried is probably downplaying it. Let me know what you watched recently. What was your favorite watch? Anything I should add on my to be watched list? Thank you for watching today. If you're new, I would love for you to subscribe, so hit the button down below. I'll see you next time. Take care. Ciao.